So here I'll walk you through your first creation in Onshape. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the create button right here, and you'll create a new document. Okay, you can call it whatever you like, and it's not going to allow you to make it private because we're on a free subscription. So you can only create public documents, which is fine. You're protected by essentially your anonymity. So there's thousands of users on here. No one's going to be searching out your stuff. But you could call it whatever you want, maybe getting started, okay, or anything you want to call it. And we'll create that public document. Okay, and so from here, I'm just going to walk you through the basics. Okay, so Onshape is a parametric modeling software, which is very different from Tinkercad, where you're using something called primitives to add together and build shapes. So think of Tinkercad as adding shapes together to build other shapes. In Onshape, what we're doing is different. We start from a 2D outline of a sketch of something we want to create, and then we turn it into a three-dimensional object. And we have a couple of tools. We have multiple tools for turning something into three-dimensional. We have an extrude option, which is what gives something volume by stacking that sketch on top of itself. We have a revolve option, which creates a solid by turning it around an axis. And then we have a sweep and a loft one, and these ones actually will connect like two sketches together. These ones are pretty powerful, but a little more difficult to use. We'll see if we have time to do that. Okay, and then we have this other thicken one that you can use, but really ideally we want to be using extrudes when possible. But before we can extrude something, we want to sketch something. And so the goal of this video is just to create a basic shape while getting used to the interface. Okay, so when you're ready to create a sketch, you click up here, okay, and you're going to see it turn red. And red is bad, meaning it didn't generate. And so when you see something red over here, that means there's something wrong going on over here. And one of the first things that you want to check, and this is the first thing you need to when you start a sketch, is you have to select a sketch plane. Okay, and so basically what happens is you can choose which face to make that sketch on. So if we choose this right plane, it'll be sticking out this way. This front plane will be sticking out that way. The top plane will be sticking up that way. If this is the bottom of your object, then ideally you want to use the top plane if you're going to be 3D printing. Okay, so we can click right there and it's fixed. Let's say that I clicked the wrong one. Then I can click this X and I can select the front plane now. And then from here, you press the N key to make it go perpendicular, and then you can sketch on that plane. But let's say I don't want the front plane, so I'm going to click the X again. I'm going to hold down the right click button to pan the screen, and now I'm going to click the top one. I'm going to press N again to get it in the frame, or to make it perpendicular. Now I want to move it a little bit so it's centered, so if I hold down the mouse wheel, if I click it, I can move it. Okay, you can also kind of scroll using the mouse plane, and what you'll see is that it scrolls at the place where you're pointing to. Okay, so try messing around with that, how you can scroll around and stuff. Okay, and so let's go ahead and start by making a box. Okay, so here you can see that you can draw two different kinds of rectangles, a corner rectangle, okay, by starting from the corner, or a center point rectangle, starting from the center. Okay, so we've created two rectangles, and now if I click again, it's going to draw another one. So if I want to now edit these rectangles, I need to press the escape key first, and then I can kind of click and drag on them. Okay, now you'll see that they're blue. Okay, and when you see it, the sketch is blue, what it means is the parts of the sketch are not constrained. Okay, so constraints in Onshape are tools that we use to basically define the object. A big difference with Onshape as opposed to Tinkercad is really the goal here in Onshape is not to build something as you go. It's to have a plan and then to create what you planned out. Okay, and so once you've created your shape, I'll get rid of this one. I'm not going to let me delete it. Delete it one at a time. Okay, so once you've created your shape, the next step is to actually define it. Okay, And so what we can do is there's a couple things we could do. So let's actually start from the beginning. We'll restart with a fresh rectangle. And you'll notice that as I'm drawing it, like there's little things that get highlighted that I can snap it to. Okay? So do you see how like that center's getting highlighted? What's going to happen now is the box will be snapped to that center line. Okay? Now, if I try to move it around, it'll move left and right, but I can't move it up and down anymore because I've constrained it to this axis. Now I can move it to here, and that's constrained to this axis too. So now I can't move it up, down, left, or right. Okay, it's not going to move around. It's just going to stay right here. Okay, I can still change the size of it. Oop, there you go. But I can't change the where it's centered. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of this one. If you don't want your box centered, then you have to be careful when you're drawing it that it doesn't get centered. So if you lock onto this line, it'll center it. If you lock onto that line, it'll center it. So if you don't want that, don't center it. The other thing that you might notice is if you draw it off to the side, you can lock onto there, or you can lock onto there, and then it'll get frozen there. Now what you might have just noticed is that this line right here just turned black, which means now we have a constraint, which is that this line has to be horizontal on the same horizontal line with this right here. Okay, now if we don't want it to be that, so if I want to do anything, you'll notice if I click again, it's going to draw a rectangle, which I don't want. So if I want to change anything, I have to press escape first. And let's say that, or I guess it's a parallel one. Let's say that I don't want this line to be attached to right here. If I select this line, it's going to bring up constraints. So you can see we have this one, and this one. Okay, and these are things that define that shape. So it says this line is perpendicular to that line right there. Okay. It is, let's show all the constraints. It's perpendicular to that line right there. It's parallel to that line there, and it's in the same horizontal line as this center point. So if I want to move it, I can actually delete that constraint, and you can click this button to show constraints. And now it's free to move again. Okay, so as you're going, the reason I'm showing all this is because you might get to a point where something is stuck in a way you don't want it, and you might have to delete a constraint. And the way you can delete constraints is by showing them and then getting rid of them. And so I just deleted a whole bunch of constraints. Oops, and I broke the center of the box, I guess. So I guess it's kind of like move it down. So anyway, deleting those constraints, I guess I want to delete this one right here. There we go, now I can move the whole thing around. Okay, so anyway, those constraints are useful tools, but they can get in the way if you do it incorrectly or make a mistake. So they're useful to delete. So let's go ahead and define this box now though. So I'm going to center it, and I can also set its dimensions by using this tool here, or I can press the letter D to bring it up. Okay, and the way it works is I can click a line and I can tell it how long to be. So like maybe I want that to be 100, and then I can click this line, or the other way I can do that is by clicking from here to here, and that one now becomes 50. I'm going to make it 50. Okay? Now something else you can do, you can click between two lines and I'll give you an angle. So this is 90 degrees. Okay? And now you'll notice that this one turned gray. Okay, the reason this turned gray is because now we've added a definition that wasn't necessary. Since this is a rectangle, these two are automatically perpendicular, and so it already knows they're 90 degrees. And so when you put this here, we're just reiterating something we already knew. And what you find out is, if you tried to change this, it's not even going to let me change it. Let's see if it'll let me change it. So let's say we change it to 85. Now you're going to see things turn red because there's a contradiction. This is a rectangle, it's perpendicular, and yet I tried to make this not be 90 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that, and it will fix it. Okay, so these are the kind of the basics of constraint. From here now, you can go ahead and make your extrude. Okay, and so when we extrude, see, it automatically did it. Maybe I don't want it to extrude that. So I'm going to click X right here to get rid of that face. And now I'm going to just reselect the face that I want to extrude. I can select it there, or I can choose Sketch 1. Okay, and then I have options here. I can set the depth, so how far I want it to stack up, so maybe to 80, or I can manually move it like this. Okay, I can also click on the arrow to flip the sides. And there's other ways that we can do an extrude too. We can do a symmetric one, so it's kind of going both ways. And then all these other ones we'll talk about more later. Okay, so this is the basics of an extrude. We can set a second end position for the other side. Okay, and then something else that's kind of cool is you can set a draft. And so maybe you want to draft it like 3 degrees. And so as it extrudes, it's going to kind of shave it down. Okay, so these are kind of the basics of Onshape. Hope you're getting the hang of it. And so now I want you to kind of mess around with it and create some shapes of your own.